I want to say something that I think most men feel, but almost nobody says out loud. Life after 40 is a lie. For most men. Not the whole life, not the people in it, not the work, the love, not the things built over decades. Those are real. But the story underneath all of it, the version of what life after 40 or after 50 is supposed to look like, supposed to feel like, supposed to mean, that story, for most men, is a lie. And most men are living it without realizing they agreed to it. It's something in that landed if you felt it before you could explain it. Stay with me. Hit like. Subscribe if you want more of this kind of honesty. This is not a channel about fixing your life. It's about seeing it clearly. And that starts now. Let me tell you what I mean by the lie. I don't mean deception. Nobody sat down and invented a false story to sell you. The lie I'm talking about is subtler. It's the accumulated weight of assumptions. Assumptions about what a man of your age, about what a man of your age should have figured out by now. About how satisfied he should feel. About what the presence of discomfort or restlessness says about him. Assumptions about what success looks like at 45. What happiness looks like at 50. What a man is supposed to want. And supposed to have stopped wanting by the time the second half begins. And those assumptions, inherited before they could be examined and reinforced by everything around you, quietly become the walls of a life. Not bars, walls. The kind you stop noticing because you've been inside them long enough that they feel like the shape of the room. I think most men after 40 and after 50 are living some version of this. Not in a dramatic way, not with a visible crisis or obvious collapse. In the quiet, daily way. The sense that the life ticks all the right boxes and something in it isn't quite right. That the version of himself he presents, responsible, capable, holding it together, is real, but partial. That there's a gap between the man other people see and the man who exists in the early morning before the performance starts. And the lie isn't the performance is false. It's that the man spent so long performing that he started to believe that performance was the whole of him. That the question he was still carrying about meaning, about direction, about who he actually is underneath everything he's been required to be, were somehow inappropriate. Signs of immaturity. Things a man of his age should have resolved by now. And so they went underground, quietly, without any announcement. Still there. But unwelcome. But there is the strange part. The men who feel this most acutely, the ones with the sharpest sense that something in the story doesn't fit, they're not the ones who got it wrong. They're the ones who are paying the most attention. Most men misunderstand this completely, because the culture reads midlife discomfort as dysfunction, restlessness as immaturity, questions as ingratitude. the refusal to be satisfied with the sufficient life as some kind of character flaw. But the truth is the opposite. The discomfort is not a sign that the man failed the story. It's a sign that the story failed him. That the version of life after 40, after 50, he was handed, stable, settled, and gradually diminishing toward the end, was never actually his. He was assembled from what other people needed him to be, from what the culture rewarded, from what made sense to everyone around him when the choices were being made. And the discomfort is the self, the actual stubborn, still alive self, refusing to accept that version as the final word. Here is what the lie actually consists of. Several layers, all of them worth naming. Let's start with the first layer, that is the lie about satisfaction. The idea that a man of a certain age and a certain level of achievement should feel a certain way, settled, grateful, substantially at peace. And when it doesn't feel that way, when the restlessness persists, when the questions want quiet, he interprets the gap as his failure, as something is wrong with him, rather than evidence that the expected satisfaction was always a story about someone else. Now, the second layer is the lie about desire. The idea that certain desires for more aliveness, for more honesty, for a version of the life that feels more genuinely his, are appropriate for young men, but embarrassing in men past 40. That wanting those things past a certain age is either a crisis or a vanity, when actually wanting a life that genuinely fits is not a symptom. It's a right. It's your right. The third layer, the deepest one, is the lie about who gets to revise the story. Most men believe implicitly that the story was fixed a long time ago, that the choices made in their 20s and 30s determined the shape of everything that followed. That the man he is now is the man he will be. And this is where things become interesting, because that belief, which feels like realism, is actually the most insidious lie of all. And something changes after 40 and after 50. That the lie was never designed to accommodate. The self becoming less willing to be managed. When you're younger, the performance is sustainable because the energy of youth powers it. The drive, the ambition, the need to prove, they provide enough momentum that the gap between the performance and the real self can be maintained indefinitely. But after 40 and after 50, the energy for maintenance thins. Not because a man is failing, because a part of him is done pretending, done performing contentment he doesn't feel, done suppressing questions that haven't been answered, done living inside a story that was written before he had enough experience to know what his story should be. And that thinning of the performance energy, most men experience it as something going wrong, when actually is something going right. The self is insisting on more space, more honesty, more room to exist outside the story that was handed to it. Most men never notice this as clarity. They feel it as discomfort and spend enormous energy trying to restore the comfort. When the most useful thing, the harder thing, is to let the discomfort speak. Here is the truth, that the lie was designed to prevent a man from reaching. The second half of your life is not already written. I know that sounds obvious, but most men don't actually live as though it's true. They live as though the trajectory is set, as though the story determined by the first half simply continues with modifications, with management, until it ends. But that's the lie. The second half is not a continuation. It's an opportunity that most men never take seriously because nobody told them it was there. The opportunity to revise the story. Not from scratch. You don't blow up what you built, but with the full weight of everything you know now. With the self-knowledge that 20 years of actual living produced, with the clarity about what matters and what doesn't. That clarity that only experience could have generated. With the permission, finally, genuinely, to stop living the story that was handed to you and start living the one that is actually yours. Most men never give themselves that permission. Not because they can't. Because the lie told them it wasn't available. So, I want to ask you something. And I'd really like to hear your answers. Leave it in the comments. What is the specific lie you've been living? Not in abstract terms. In your specific life. The version of yourself you maintain that doesn't quite match who you actually are. The story you tell about your life that leaves out the parts that don't fit the narrative. The thing you keep waiting to want differently. The desire, the question, the restlessness that you've been filing under things a man of my age should still be dealing with. What is it? Because naming it, even just to yourself, even in the relative privacy of a comment, is the beginning of the lie losing its power. The lie only works in the dark, in the unexamined space between who you present and who you actually are. Once it's named, it can be worked with. Life after 40 is a lie for most men. Not because their lives are bad. Their lives are real. The love in them is real. The work, the sacrifice, the things built over decades, all real. The lie is the story wrapped around all of it. The story that says this is what it was supposed to look like, and if it doesn't feel right, that's your problem. That story That is the story that confuses the shape of a life with the meaning of one. That equates the sufficient with the satisfied, the stable with the alive, the performed contentment with the genuine kind. And the truth, the one the lie was preventing, is that the sufficient life and the genuine life are not the same thing. And the man who has lived long enough to feel the difference is not failing. He's finally close enough to the truth to do something with it. I want to say something clearly. This isn't an invitation to blow up your life, not to abandon what you've built, not to run from the responsibilities that are genuinely yours. It's an invitation to stop pretending the story you're living is the only one available, to look honestly at what fits and what doesn't, to give the real version of yourself, the one with the questions and the desires and the quiet certainty that more is possible. Give to that version a little more room. That's it. Just a little more room. If this named something you've been carrying, drop it in the comments. What's the lie you've been living? I read every single one, and I will answer. Share this with a man who needs to hear it. Subscribe if you want to keep having this conversation. The lie loses power the more honestly it's named.